Hello everyone. In this video, we'll see how to make use of Trello APIs to create boards, lists, and cards. We'll also see how each of these can be modified. And we'll be doing this without using Trello GUI. Instead, we'll access the APIs through POSTMAN. Prerequisites. The expectation is the viewers will have a basic understanding of how to use POSTMAN and what APIs are. Now, what is Trello board? Trello is a task management app that gives you a visual overview of what is being worked on in the project and who is working for it. This could be similar to the usual way of using a whiteboard and sticky notes as seen here. Suppose you have a program for Kanban incorporation to the company. We can create a Trello board named Kanban incorporation. To manage the program, we'll create 3 columns: to do, doing, and done. In Trello, these columns are termed as list. Then we'll add the individual activities such as learn about Kanban, use Kanban, try Kanban tool, etc. and move them across the columns according to their current progress state. These individual activities are called cards in Trello. Let's see a sample Trello board in Trello GUI. See, I have a Trello board called Artistic Pursuit, and it has various columns called list and the activities in here called cards. We shall move on to see how to use Postman to create the board, list, and cards on Trello. Now in Postman, we need to set the method and the URL. The first task is to create a new board. So to find the URL and the endpoints, we need to read the Trello APIs, and let's go to developers.trello.com. So our first task is to create a board. So we'll search under boards for the URL and endpoint. Now when you're creating something, the method used will be post. So let's search under post. Here it is. Create a new board, and here is the URL and the endpoint. Let's copy this URL. Now what are the mandatory parameters? Of course, the name of the board, and we want to create a new board without any default list. So for that we have to set the value for default list, which could be true or false. Let's go to Postman. So the method is post, and this is the URL. In the parameter tab, let's set the parameters. Name of the board, which is Kanban incorporation. Next is the default list, set to false. In the next tab, we have to set the authorization. Let's go back and check what kind of authorization we would require. So it should be there in the introduction section. This documentation gives most of the necessary information required to use these APIs. However, we have to keep in mind there are certain aspects which we have to guess based on our experiences and other heuristics. As per this documentation, when making any API request to Trello, we need to include the API key along with the tokens and the secret tokens. We can get the API key from this link. API keys are associated with your Trello member account. So you have to create an account in Trello. I have already created my account in Trello. So when I click on this link, I can get the key, tokens, and the secret keys. Also, from this link, we can get the information that the authorization type is auth1. Moving back to Postman, we'll select the type as OAuth, and I have already set the keys and tokens here. In the headers tab, we do not have to give anything. In the body tab, we have already given the parameters in the params tab, hence we do not have to give anything in the body tab. As of now, these two tabs, the prerequisites and test, can be ignored. So let's send this HTTP request. We can see the status is 200. A board named Kanban Incorporation has been created with the ID as given. Since we will be using the board ID for further HTTP request, let's save this in the environment variable. For that, create an environment. Say Trello environment. And add a variable board ID. Now let's verify this in the Trello GUI. Here it is. The new board Kanban incorporation has been created without any default list. Now I would like to modify the board name and also add some description. Let's see how to do that. Let's go back to the documentation and under boards. For modifying any properties, the method used will be put. So let's look under put methods. And here it is. Update an existing board by ID. So the mandatory parameter would be the board ID. And of course, we have to give the new name for the board. And for the description, the parameter name is DESE. In the Postman, I have already set up the URL. Now this ID is the board ID which we have in our environment. Let's select that environment, Trello environment, and we have the board ID here. Now the new name has to be given in the parameter. Let's say internalize Kanban with some description. We have to give the authorization and send the HTTP request. Status is 200. The name has been changed to internalize Kanban with some description. Let's verify this on the Trello GUI. The name has been changed and the description is here. Now, the next task is to create these columns which are called list: to do, doing, and done. Let's go to the documentation to see how to create list. So that will be a post method. So this is the URL and endpoint for creating a new list on the board. And the parameters are name of the list and the ID of the board onto which the list is being created. As I've already set up this URL, we'll make use of it. The two parameters are name of the list and the board ID. And the value of the board ID is in the environment variable board ID. Give the type of authorization and send the request. Here, the list is created with this ID. Let's save this ID. Let's rename that as done list ID, as we have two more lists to be created. Let's check the GUI to see whether the done list has been created. Very well, it has been created. Now we'll go on creating the other two lists, to do and doing. The only change would be the name of the list. Doing is created with this ID. Let's save that to the environment. Renaming the variable name to doing list ID. Next, we'll create the to-do list. We'll send the request and to-do is created with this ID, and we'll save this to the environment and update the variable name. Let's verify the GUI. We have three lists: to do, doing, and done. Next step is to create the activities which are called cards. We'll check the documentation to see how to create cards. To create card, it will be under the post method, and here is the URL. And the mandatory parameter would be the ID of list onto which the card has to be created, and of course the name of the card. I have set up the URL. Let's give the parameter names. Name of the card. Say, let's give learn Kanban. And the ID of the list. Now we'll be creating this card onto list named to do. In the authorization tab, we'll set the authorization. And that's it. We'll send the request. The status is 200. The card has been created with this ID. Let's save this card ID to the environment. Let us check the Trello GUI whether the card has been created, and yes, here is a card learn Kanban. We can go on creating more cards here. Our next step is to move this card from to-do list to the doing list. Let's read the documentation. To move the card is to make some changes, which will be put methods. So here is the update a card. The mandatory parameter is the card ID. And to move the card to a different list, this is the endpoint. Let's go to Postman. I have already set up this URL. Give the endpoint. And the ID here would be the card ID. We have already saved the card ID in the environment. So let's make use of it. And this is the ID of the list to which this card has to be moved. So we are moving it from to-do list to doing list. Let's select doing list ID. Let's see the authorization. And that's it. We'll send the request. Yes, we've missed her. Let's try now. The card has been moved. Let's verify it on the GUI. The card has been moved from to do to doing. Now we can go on doing many other changes to this board. The last thing we would like to see in here today is how to delete the board we created. Now I have already set up the query for that, which is available in the documentation. The only mandatory parameter is the board ID, and we have given the authorization. Let's send the request. The status is 200. Let's verify in the GUI. The board internalized Kanban is no more to be seen here. So these are the two links I have referred to while making this video, Trello.com and developers.trello.com. You can further enhance these HTTP requests by including various tests in each of them. Thank you for watching this video.